everyone watching out there. This is Ghana. She has been an artist from a long time. We knew about her through articles and through one of our heads at Levelers, Samriddhi Chafle. Samriddhi Chafle ma'am had spoken highly about Ghana ma'am, and it feels like an honor to be talking to you. There are very few people who get real with the ongoing social scenarios in the world, and there are a few people who actively take part and try to change the world as well. So, ma'am, how would you describe, ma'am, where were you born and brought up? We'd like to know a little bit about your childhood.
Okay, I was born in Chennai, and I was raised in a very nice space called YMCA, which is a physical education college.
Okay.
My dad was a professor of physical education, and my mom was a doctor. And we happened to have a staff quarters within the space. And so I basically essentially grew up for the first very formative years of my life was in a campus, like a sports campus. And so yeah, that's where I grew up, basically in Chennai, and more so, it was almost like a mini forest within Chennai. Like because it was like it was you can compare it to an IIT campus or something like that because there was a lot of sports fields around. So I was surrounded with a lot of sports when I was young. So that's was my
So,
childhood.
so how did the entire childhood shape up your present self as of now? Do you have any notable events in your life that took place as a child?
Definitely, I think for me, a lot of early exposure to sports, and I was a gymnast for the first. From I started gymnastics when I was when I was 6 years old, and
Okay.
till 13 I did gymnastics, and from then on I moved on to playing basketball. But basically, having exposed myself to sports at a very early age kind of gave me a lot of, confidence and like a sense of self worth, or be it like the ability to see past vanity, like especially in terms of body confidence, or being like a dark skinned girl from the south. Like I can imagine there will be a lot of things that one has to deal with, which I think for me on early on, my confidence as to more than what my body looks like or what it's being criticized as, but my ability to do something with my body and be that and perform and all that kind of gave me a very early confidence. I think that still has is the foundation for a lot of my personality or anything that I feel like I'm able to do is because I think I was never really uh, I did not allow people to put me down. Like just even at early age of 6, because when say you're in gymnastics and things like that, where you have to wear a gymnastic suit and perform in a competition, which is like all as good as a swimsuit,
Mhm.
and small things like you're comfortable with your skin color, the size of your body. So I feel like as a woman, like what I got very early, thanks to my parents, was I think has done a lot of good like for me, and that's something I highly recommend most people, especially women, to get into sports very early. I know that gives you a lot of life situations early on to deal
True.
with, and builds a very real sense of confidence that can't be taken away.
This is actually very relatable to the current scenario where majority of the youth from a very young age has been in contact with social media so much that they fantasize a kind of image to display onto the world. So it brings a sort of self-image before self-esteem and self-confidence. Somehow, uh, even in India, I still remember dark girls and a little girls on the heavier side are never really sought out to match the beauty standards and all of that. It's very true when you mentioned that from that age, people actually start looking at you differently. And even Samruddhi mom told me a lot about how when she was skating around, so she had gone for multiple competitions and all. It gave her a sense of confidence which nothing else could ever replace. So it's actually kind of good to see.
Yeah, I think it becomes very functionality over vanity. You can
Correct.
have a fair, unscarred body, but what's the use of it? Like, if your
True.
body is not to be used for anything, there's no point in having anything.
Yeah.
So I feel even like those aspects sink in very early, and like I feel anything needs to be functional first and beautiful
Correct.
next. So, and I don't think beauty is of any use to anybody anyway, or in the typical sense of what beauty is used as, because it's like a passing cloud. You can be a face in things, but I feel like this whole sense of vanity has to go very early. And if that, it really, I think it's in the upbringing, what you're being told at home, how much importance do people
Yeah.
themselves give, how important to the parents. Like if your parent is going to say, "Don't go out, you're going to get tanned," it's the parents' fault. It's not your fault,
Mm,
like
true.
because you are you're dependent on your parent for so many things. So it feels those that kind of sense of vanity should be avoided very early, and that will automatically happen. And I feel especially pre-puberty these things have to happen, because during puberty you're as it is very conscious of who you are, what you're becoming, and
Correct.
that's not avoidable. So if you have gained your confidence before that, it definitely, through experience and in retrospect, I'm able to see that it really worked out for me. But
Yes.
when it was happening and as it was happening, I didn't realize what a great advantage I was having over, because that is one, that blind confidence about me as a person, my abilities as a person was always the one pushing me to do things, and not seeking validation from anybody, especially for my looks, was something that never was a criteria for me in life. I still think it isn't. And yeah,
It it actually plays a great role once you've crossed the stage and you've started understanding life in its true essence. So
true.
I'd like to ask, like, how was your higher education and your college life shaped up?
So I finished my schooling, and at the point of finishing my school, I was not really sure of what I wanted to do, because I had multiple interests, and I did want to become. I was into science. I was a good academic student as well. Uh, when I partially think it's because, and not even partially, I think it's mostly to do with my parents, both of them being actually quite intelligent and very academic themselves. I think genetically I was able to, I was an above average student throughout, in spite of consistently being in sports. And throughout school, I was part of different cultural activities and like music, dance, everything I would participate in. My parents never forced. I have an elder sibling and a younger sister. Both my brother and me were never forced into studying or like getting good marks. The only thing that my parents were worried about is like, don't sit idly at home. Like the laziness was not something that was encouraged. Other than that, it was always getting out, and we having a whole campus to play. We were so active. But by the time I had got to my 12th, I kind of decided that I wanted to do medicine. And this was again no pressure from my parents. This was my own want to do it. And when I actually started thinking about it seriously, by then I hadn't even thought about entrance exams and things like that. So I took a year off after my 12th. I took a sabbatical year where I did not do anything. Or rather, I did a lot of things. I worked in a channel called Southern Spice Music as a stylist. I did a course in design. Then I worked. I did a lot of random things along with preparing for my All India Medical entrance
Okay.
exams. And during that preparation process is when I realized that I didn't want to do medicine, because as much as I loved the subject, I did not enjoy studying only one thing all the time, at least like 10 hours of preparation on just that is not, I didn't have the focus or the discipline to pursue that. And one thing that was very clear is that my next 10 years, and especially my youth and my college life, is going to be miserable. If being the kind of person I was, who was always multi dimensional in practices, for me that seemed like a jail time. So I had decided I didn't want to do medicine, and that's how I landed up applying to a design college in Singapore. And in my exposure, I only knew that fashion design was there. So I landed up studying my undergraduation in Singapore for fashion design, and later on I specialized in textiles. But if I had known more, or if I had more, I probably would have picked another genre of design because I'm more of a design person, less of a fashion person. But I absolutely am glad and thank. I mean, it's such a relevant, useful skill to have to know how to make your own clothes, like the whole roti kapda makan thing. Like I feel like it like clothing is a very important form of design, and in a lot of ways it has a lot of parallels with architecture, and it's like the identity to a place and time. Like how do you define a place and time is with the kind of clothing that people wear and the kind of houses that are being built, like, and they always carry over, at least in terms of form and influences and things like that, and also from converting something from two-dimensional into a three-dimensional form. uh, and I was more interested in that aspect, especially pattern making and designing, and kind of making it very. Mine was not a culturally uh, inclined design. It was broader than that. For me, design was about functionality, multifunctionality. Like I would want a garment that can be worn in 17 different ways, or a bag that converts into a top that converts into a shoe. Like for me, it was more about exploring aspects of design,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it worked very well for me. So that's how my undergraduation happened in Singapore,
Okay.
because I had, by the time I decided not to do medicine, all the design colleges in India had closed, and I had to apply outside, and I got through. When I got through, I thought, obviously I'm so good at this, obviously I'll get through. Again, blind confidence. But when I got there is when I realized that I was nowhere close to where everybody else was in my league. Like everybody already knew so much of computers. By the time they come to design school in Singapore, everybody was much more equipped than me. So I took a year to catch up with my peers. But I think it was great exposure for me studying in Singapore, because the facilities there, like, and I feel especially with an art or a design college, is like an ATM. It's how much you want to withdraw. It keeps
Mm-hmm.
churning out. It really depends on the student. Like I feel the college plays a very small role in
True.
learning, especially when it comes to I feel art and design.
How would you say the exposure in Singapore is different to what a person can receive in India? Like, what is the mindset of design in people in Singapore with respect to, the design here in now India?
Definitely better,
Mhm.
100% on an average. I'm sure there are very good colleges in India, but I really haven't come across anybody from a fashion background who has impressed me with their knowledge or understanding of design, at least as a fresh graduate. After like 3 4 years of experience, they were. But in contrast, by the time I had stepped out of college, I had a full functional portfolio that could work as because we didn't have exams.
Okay.
We had progressive assessment, which means we were working our ass off through the week. There is no other way you can pass the course. You have to submit something every week for every subject for you to get your appropriate marks. So 70% of your marking is progressive and 30% is out of a final assessment. And literally, I haven't written an exam since my 12th standard. So that makes a lot of sense. And I feel every art and design course should be based like that, where you're walking out of a uh, college with a full portfolio, because end of the day your portfolio is what is going to get you work. And that basic perspective I feel hasn't changed in India. Your marks are irrelevant. If even as a designer or an artist, I'm going to hire someone based on their portfolio,
Correct.
not based on how much marks they have. So
True.
I feel that fundamental aspect definitely has to change. And also technical skills. Like here, I feel a lot of design students cheat, in the sense that they don't make like the importance to actual labor based design is not there, whereas uh, like the modules that we had, where sewing was a main module. You had to
Mhm.
pass your sewing. You had to sew in school. Like pattern making was a main module. You have to learn how to pattern making. You can't cheat this. It was way more practical. And I'm exposed to a little bit of design approaches in India, I don't know how it is currently because this was again 10 years ago. I think it must have improved. But things like communication skills was a subject, portfolio development was a subject, um, a lot of internships were encouraged, a lot of access to other departments were given, like fine arts or product design, or we had exposure to other design areas where we could go consistently visit shows that are happening across the school
Mhm.
and things like that. So I feel it was like more of a collaborative environment where at least you're inspiring each other through ideas and design
True.
rather than just an isolated space of passion. And of course, I was a misfit in my college from the beginning. Like, I was not someone who was fashionably dressing up or, you know, throwing on a show. Like, it was not that for me from the beginning, and I stuck to it. And I had to defend my professors used to be quite upset that I was walking into college like, I just got out of a football field. And I'd be like, see, you can question me if I'm not submitting my projects on time. And I was a scholar student by the end of the year. Like, as I had to win my professors over. Like, there was a concept of racism that I experienced for the first time. I was the first Indian student in my entire college. So, I mean, that's not something that I had previously, even thought of. But, those small biases, there are some professors who can't help it and it comes through. It's very confusing early on. Why am I not getting as much as I deserve to get? And, those things. And luckily, I was lucky enough to find some great professors who identified me and encouraged me into developing my design skills. Like, I would say I went in as a very raw, talented person for sure, but I think I was groomed in college in terms of what to do, how to do, and yeah,
It
so I think it
refined your
worked out.
it refined your
Yeah, it, it,
ability.
it really made me, especially the international exposure, I feel was great. I'm so glad I didn't do it in India because I'm not an Indian designer. I'm not like thinking saris and like borders and jari, which is what they tend to categorize you as. Like, in my second year, I did a collection based on nuclear warfare, which was about, like, say, taking up something like a fission reaction and representing it onto a garment. Or so for me, it was always adapting ideas. Like, say, in a nuclear, the first nuclear bomb became the sleeve design for a garment. Or say the mushroom cloud that happens because of a nuclear blast was the silhouette of the garment. So, kind of adapting it into, and somewhere there was always an aspect of social awareness, which I didn't realize was there. At least it was not a conscious decision. My other, my final year work was about buoyancy, anti gravity. I was always into very science related things. And towards the last, I kind of had gotten into, I had created a collection based on the war refugees of Afghanistan and, like, recreating the terrains of the landscape as textiles onto the garment. So I, like, somewhere, like, I don't know what genre of design or fashion this would come under. For me it was very organic, and in college I went free. Like, I wasn't thinking practical because I knew that I had to get out and be practical. So in college I was encouraged to be very impractical and do whatever I felt like doing. So I feel those aspects, I genuinely wish that change happens in India. And,
In India.
you know, yeah. I mean, you don't even need a formal education to be a fashion designer.
True. It's very true when they say beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. But every perspective is changing. How are you supposed to, benchmark a person's design or evaluate and like give it out of 100? Because every idea is different. That's so true. Me being from an architectural background, we've had so many good designs amongst our mates, or if you go for national competitions and all of that. But at the end of the day, you feel, what are they judging you on? What's the basis of judging? Because it's like poles
So
apart.
it's quite similar, right? Like, there is actually criteria to judge this. Say you're developing a design.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the first week, So you have 4 weeks. The clarity of our curriculum was so good.
Yeah.
We would get a course module before saying this is your 2 weeks, this is what you're going to do in every week. So the first week, say you come up with 5 ideas. You just have to submit your 5 ideas that week. You get marked for that. As long as you're churning out work, you get marked for it because, I'm sure in architecture it's the same. Uh, Only 5% of people who study fashion design probably become designers because it's a very overall skill to have. Like you have to be
Yeah.
good at so many things. It's like people who are in filmmaking, probably 2% are directors. There are so many other aspects of design that people can be good at. So having that clarity of curriculum or saying, okay, now the next week your developmental sketches, as long as you submit 50 developmental sketches, you're marked for it. And then if you do everything on time, you're going to pass your module. But whether you excel or not is going to be based on 30% of your presentation with the panel. So to me, that whole setup makes a lot of sense. Like
Correct.
that whole module, the way, because you're held responsible, there is a credit accountability to your work. You can't just faff, and if you're not working hard, you're not going to make it through college. That was a simple rule for us,
Mm.
and I feel that's how colleges should be.
Yeah.
Like
True.
just make you work instead of feeding your ego, or and especially design and art students come with a massive ego. I feel it's important to place yourself or be placed appropriately.
That's actually even effective, more effective. Like even though it makes more sense, it will probably be more effective while a person is in their working or professional stage of life where they're putting everything that they've learned into practice. Because no matter how bookish or theoretical you study, if it's not in practice, if you're not able to have that confidence in front of a client, or with the design proposal, it it eventually just crumbles down into something that's
How
not.
is your exam helping you in any way?
Yeah,
Like, where is this examination process helping you in any way as a designer or an artist? It just doesn't make any sense. Instead, make people make more projects,
mm,
build their portfolio. Like that's what by the time I got out from my first year, my second year, my third year, everything could go into my portfolio. They had a vision where they were like, okay, now make it into a layout such that it becomes a portfolio.
true.
Like there is this whole aspect of building your work through college, and that's what it should be.
Exactly.
Because learning in design and art is a lifelong process. You'll never
Mm,
learn it in 3 years or 5 years of time. Like you're going to constantly learn, but at least put it together well and take it out and show it to people. Like,
true.
that's what I feel colleges should be focusing on. And you don't even need colleges. So if you find a good enough mentor,
Yeah, if
you'll get a
you
job.
want to learn something, you can actually find it very, in your vicinity itself. You don't really require a bunch load of
Yeah.
books to help you out. That's very true, very true. Ma'am, looking at your present working in experience right now, what inspired you to actually, make movements like the 30 posters or the 30, so the paintings across the walls, creating movements through art? What inspired you to actually empower women in our society?
I think it happened. One, I think I always had an intention to do community based work. That was also one of the reasons I came back to India because I felt very disconnected with what I was working on. I was working on virtual reality and real time garment simulation and research and things like that. That was my job. That was technically the only job I held like that. But when I came back to India, I had a much more because I had grown up with my parents were always community based and like very socially aware people. And especially my father, he was working with Special Olympics, and he was like with a lot of other disability sports. And I was also a trainer. I had worked with disability sports, and so for me, it was just the disconnect with what I was working and who is it really benefiting kind of hit
Mhm.
me. And when I came back, I never learned art, at least in a sense. I am a self-taught artist. When I came back, I didn't. I mean, I used to draw. Like I used to draw a little more than what other kids used to draw in school. But as I said, like I had so many feet and so many things. Like I was more into sports. Like
Mhm.
back in school, everybody would probably remember me as a sports person. Like that was my biggest identity. But I also used to do art. I used to do dance, like everything. But me coming back, and I think for about a couple of years, I ran a unit, tailoring unit.
Okay.
Then I dispersed that, and then I moved. I started traveling. I moved to Pondicherry. I worked as a design teacher in a school for some time, and from there I started curating art shows. And from there I started doing traveling, documentation, and art. So that's sort of how my art journey began. And on the way, this whole movement and everything was mainly because of a person called Purnama, who was an artist, a wall muralist. She's the founder of the Aravani art project. So I met her in one of the walls, which we painted together. That was my first wall.
Mhm.
Again, blind confidence. I never knew how to paint a wall. I'd never painted a wall before. But I just showed up. They were like, "We want you to paint a wall." I was like, "Cool, let's just go paint a wall." And I was like, "Okay, how difficult can it be?" But when I went there, I met a couple of other artists who was Purnama and Neeti. And Purnama is the person who taught me everything I know about walls, but it was not active teaching. I was like learning like Eklavya. Basically, I was like, okay, this is how it is, this is how it is, this is how it is. And then that began the journey of my walls with Purnama. So these projects that you talk about are Purnama's projects, which she started like sharing because we connected as we didn't connect as people initially because we assumed like we had enough people in our lives who were intense as it is that we didn't want to get close. But it was inevitable. We had to discuss it because we both like when she called me for the second project, I was surprised. I was like, I thought you didn't like me. She's like, I thought you didn't like me. She's like, I love your work. I said, I love your work too. But and then that's when we kind of figure and now she's like a crucial part of my life. And so these projects, 30 women across India, was a part of another bigger project called Crossbow Walk, where this girl she traveled from uh, Kanyakumari to Kashmir, and they identified 30 women they met along the way who inspired them to paint. So for me, fundamentally, the idea connects.
Mhm.
Like I feel, see, before I started making a profession out of my passion, I was doing the same thing. Now I'm just getting paid for it.
Okay.
So before I was an artist, I already was doing art.
Mm.
It's just that it took me 2 years to call myself an artist and take that acknowledgement. But whether they were paying me or not, I would have still done it. That was the main difference for me in
Mm.
terms of these wall projects or movements because I personally feel my art comes from a place of surplus, a place of a privileged person trying to bridge the gap. That's where I place myself as an artist.
Mhm.
And I don't want to preach this, I'd rather do.
Mhm.
Like saying, okay, I know I have had these privileges, I've had these advantages, I have not dealt with a lot of problems, which I could have dealt with, but
Mhm.
I'm not going to romanticize on the fact that I have gotten away with it. So I've had a lot of survivor's guilt, and probably I still do. And as long as I do, I found art as a medium to convert that survivor's guilt into something that is probably going to help me cope with it and also, make a difference if possible. Because I don't want to just, acknowledge the guilt. I want to fix it.
Mhm.
So say, okay, I've had these advantages. Let me see where I can, like, as a strong person, I want to be in a place where I'm facilitating for people who can't be strong enough for themselves. And that's mostly where my representation comes in. I work with inclusive art, I work with children with disabilities. I work for this organization called Vidya Sagar, where we go to rural uh, villages in India and especially Tamil Nadu and paint wall murals based on disability inclusion. And we get disabled children to come and paint. So the funding for those projects is nothing. But the point is, I'd rather do that than do something corporate or commercial. But I'm more than happy to do something corporate and commercial because only that enables this. So
Yeah.
I think I found my, trade-offs. Like there are things I do for money and there are things I don't do for money. And once I've decided that before a project, I don't question it during or after the project.
That's such a healthy mindset in the kind of world we're living in right now, which requires, these kind of thought processes where we know so many people who are, bound to think of what will they earn if they do this project sort of mindset. They're like, what am I earning? What's my profit? After which I'll put in my effort. It's like this is like a breath of fresh air in the existing scenarios that we see in the world. So tell me something about your work culture, your present path that you're on right now.
So actually, at the moment, it's quite balanced. I would feel like I was in a phase where I would say yes to everything. I think now I'm in a place where I'm saying no to most of the things. That feels good. And I have my work culture, I would say, as a freelance artist in India.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a mixed medium artist. I don't just do one kind of thing. I'm very adaptable. And I have a clear distinction between my personal work
Mm-hmm.
and what I do for others. And when I do for others, I really put my ego down and I'm very happy to collaborate on what my client wants. And I think that makes more sense for me.
True.
And when I work for myself is where I let myself be and express myself as an artist, or especially the content of my work is much
Mm-hmm.
more free. So I need to do this in order to, you know, do that. Like I feel those go hand in hand. And second of all, I recently had a physical injury where I like had my knee. Uh, someone I've been active all my life, and I had my first severe injury, which kind of really uh, made me immobile, independent for some time, and that has shown like it has put a lot of things in perspective. So I realized that I don't want to take up too much work, and if you don't have your body, nothing matters. If you don't have your health in place, none of these ideas or philosophies or art, none of this really, you can't enjoy anything. So I'm in a place where I'm trying to focus on my physical health
Mm-hmm.
because again, mental health is something that we keep talking about, right? But I feel like we all ignore physical quite a bit. So I'm in a place where I'm trying to figure out my physical health, focus on my physical health first, and then parallelly do what I can as an artist. And I have a very healthy network of friends that I collaborate with. People find it very difficult to find
Mm-hmm.
working friends. But luckily, I have a lot of, most of my collaborators are my friends, and they pay very well in the sense it's a very healthy conversation about finances that we have in our projects. Be it asking or before asking, it's given. Like, it's a very approachable, healthy, economical interaction that we all have. And we've learned to have it also over the years. We've built that because we've seen each other being used or manipulated. That when we bring in projects for each other, we tend to make sure that it's not taken for granted and repeat for granted. So that is sort of my broad work culture here. And I currently work remotely. Uh, Most of my work happens through an iPad at the moment, last 2 years. Uh, and since I'm a mixed medium artist, I do a lot of digital work, and I think the iPad, especially Procreate, has been a great tool in terms of because almost all the artwork that we do is becoming digital. Nobody really needs tangible physical artwork anymore, other than walls, even for which we need to design digitally and then execute it physically. So it's been a very interesting time for me as an artist to figure out new kinds of work. Like I wouldn't have thought this is the kind of work I do live sketches for workshops that happen because I would have never thought that was a possibility before, So with the tools, I'm constantly learning. At the same time, using digital tools is quite harmful to your physical health. Just holding your posture, and that has also taken a toll. So it's now like I'm understanding that I need to be balanced physically to be able to do anything else. So that has been, uh, I have ruined my posture over 10 years of design art, right? Like my chin has jutted out because I don't work with the right kind of furniture. So, like, these are all things that I'm really now honestly telling younger artists to become aware of right from the beginning because it doesn't happen fast. It happens slowly, but the damage is very severe. Like it's not as easy to get out of these things, especially the current generation, which is probably using devices even more.
True.
Like just your neck, your spine, your back. You need to find ergonomic ways to work. You need to have a posture where you're sitting wherever you're sitting most of the time. You need to be sitting in a better way
Correct.
than just because at that in that moment you don't realize. So that is something that I'm trying to figure out. And I don't enjoy living in a city anymore. During the lockdown, me and my partner we moved to a space which is remote. It is outskirts of Pondicherry and in between Oroville and Pondicherry. This village called Gominarpalli. And I mean, having lived my childhood in a very nature surrounded place,
Mm.
this just feels at home for me. But he's a music producer, I'm an artist, and so between the two of us, we have kind of found peace in working in a very remote area where we have great internet and we have a decent house. And we have friends visiting, family visiting all the time, so we don't miss anything and we don't see the point of living in a city anymore. To be very honest, it just feels like extra stress. Like we have the same amount of work as everybody else has, but just less stress. Like absolutely no stress or sound, and we wake up to bird sounds. We sleep to birds. We deal with the environment on a daily basis. We don't wear chappals most of the time, so it's kind of finding our own little space. And I don't think I can ever go back unless someone's paying me like a crore a month to live in a city. Then maybe yeah, I'll think about it. But other than that, I don't see any benefits
Yeah.
of living in a city anymore because through the lockdown we've survived great and thrived. And I'm also currently working on longer term projects. I've started taking up things that are going to take 5 or 10 years to show results.
Okay.
And that is my development personally as an artist, where, like quick gratification or quick feeling of I've done something well and I'm getting people to appreciate it. Because, see, as an artist, I'm still like a 5-year-old with a crayon drawing. Like, whatever I still make, I show it to anybody who comes over, my friends. Like I would say, see, this is what I made. This is what I made. Even if I'm making things on Procreate, I would print them out and show it. So I seek that validation consistently. And Instagram has been great for me like that because you're able to just throw your work out, and for you to uh, get that validation is great. And it shouldn't get to your head in the sense, at least, oh,
True.
this only 30 people like, is this artwork bad? Oh, that 100 people like, this 200 people like. So those numbers don't really translate into something.
Yeah.
So I had a profile that was built very organically, in the sense I do have people who follow me purely for my artwork and not for me. Among the followers I have, I think at least 20% is the people I know.
Okay.
70-80% are people I don't know.
Mm.
And they all follow me for my work, which I think unless you're making unless you have returns from your Instagram, it's a waste of time.
Mm.
Like unless you're making some kind of money in your network, you're not going to benefit from it at all because it's quite addictive, as we all know. I have been there and I realized that I spend a lot of time, even though I spend time on my own engagement also. I still find it very easy to just slip into that kind of a space. But Instagram has made me, for an artist like me who likes making a lot of work, it's provided a great platform. It's pretty much my, internet office. Like it's just there. And how I use Instagram, like one of my working methods, that for me is when I don't have active work, or even when I have active commercial or commissioned work, I keep putting up my artwork online, and that is sort of becomes a reminder for people that I'm an artist and I exist. So when they have somebody looking for an artist for something, I come to their mind immediately, and I have gotten a lot of inquiries through that network. People who follow me have recommended me to get work. So I feel that's something that has really worked out for me. Just, I keep putting, and I don't care about if this is better than before. That's one thing I don't have. I don't try to only put out my best work. I put out a lot of my work, not all, but a lot of my work. Most of my commissioned work I don't put up because that's like a client in kind of situation. But yeah, I feel being here in a remote space, working remotely, and just making my content and having sufficient work. It's probably taken me 4 years to get here, to be in this place of stability with my art and surviving as an art professional in India. And I feel like it's highly possible. I can even be making twice the amount of money that I'm making currently if I take up more work. But that's a trade-off I'm making for the sake of my physical health, because that just means I have to spend so much more time on the computer, and that's not what I want to do. So my work culture is now I want to garden, I want to, heal my leg, I want to make a little bit of paintings, and I want to do a little bit of commission work that exists. And yeah, and apart from that, one of the main projects that I'm working on is called the Adult Foundation. I'm one of the co-directors of the project, where we work with adults with disabilities in rural communities in India, where we do skill training, skill development, and make products using those skills to create employment opportunities for them, in turn creating an economic, they generate some money for themselves. So our wish is to generate at least 2,000 to 3,000 rupees per person per month for an adult with disability, which at the moment is like zero. And they are a huge liability to their families. And there are so many difficulties, right? They can't step out, they can't go there. So we're trying to, I have friends who've been working in this community-based rehabilitation sector for the last 10, 12 years. And having done that on the ground, they have understood that this is a need that we need to bridge. And we have just registered a company. It's a non-for-profit foundation called Andol Foundation, and we are now slowly building livelihoods in rural communities for disadvantaged, people. It can also be women. It can also be. We try to combine them so that we can enable that kind of a setting. So one of the recent projects that we did was, we have a cyanotype artist and a eco printing person who went to a rural space. We taught them how to do eco printing, collect flowers, generate dyes, transfer it on. And now they are getting extremely creative, and they're doing their own designs, and they send us the fabric. So we design products with the fabric, again with the women community we have, where we have 2,000 tailors. They know basic tailoring. So for us, it's now in a space of designing interesting products which are useful, and we give these as return gifts in weddings. Like for my own wedding, we had like bags made by people with disability, and that was a useful gift. Like people still use it. We don't just want something that is aesthetic, and we don't want to sell on the aspect of pity or support. We're like, this is a good product, buy it. So that's sort of where I come in. There are other people taking care of other aspects of it, but I come in as a product designer, as a designer trying to fine tune the design, make it better, make it more, real. Like, forget who is making it. Like, it just has to be a great product. So that's something. And we invite designers to come on board, especially architects who I think, have this real craving for design. And for them to just see through what they actually design doesn't happen because you guys design houses. So if anybody watching architects, we are there on Instagram as and all foundation. And if you guys want to work with us, you can, the process would be to pitch a design idea, and then you have to prototype it, and prototyping it in a stepwise method where we can see where we can engage our people, and kind of adapt the technique so that there is motor development or skill development, and there is some kind of benefit in the process. So this, it would be a very interesting thing to do, and it's paid. We don't expect any of this. It's not a lot of money, but it's definitely going to be paid for, and as the product grows, it's going to happen.
You were very right with the fact that architects have a lot of design potential, but when it comes down to execution, because of technicalities and civil constructions, the scope of design just keeps on reducing and reducing and reducing. Then you have to, it's very difficult for an architect to actually even um, relate to the exteriors and the interiors. Like they have that much capacity, but then it's something or the other that comes in. Either it's the client or it's the technicality that stops you from actually even
There's
thinking.
money, scale, client, and so many things,
everything has
right?
a
Yeah.
everything has some aspect, and somehow it just gets compromised with the design, and then you're like,
See,
I
and
can't.
I live near Oroville, and like
Hmm.
Oroville is just a bunch of group of architects is called Oroville.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
every second person we meet is an architect here. It's like the engineering of the cities in India. Like, so, I mean, most of our friends who are working with us are architects.
Okay.
The designers, the designer type artist is an architect. So I feel like architecture, especially we would love to invite architects to come up and design something that is going to, like, it can be a lampshade, it can be a bag, it can be a new, solving a real problem, and trying to keep it as sustainable in the materials that we use. Like, we are trying to be as, we would love to be 100% sustainable, but we're also being 100% practical. So we're trying to somewhere find a middle ground about all of this stuff. So far, we haven't managed to use any plastic in our products. So it can be anything. Like, as long as you think it's a useful product, and we don't want it to be um, like we make stores, we make mugs, we make planters. We have certain already existing skill sets. Like, we have a unit that can make screen printing, that can do block printing. We have a collection of about 2000 blocks that we have collected. So if you can imagine, innovate, and create a design, we are willing to co-work with you in, like, sort of prototyping this thing and trying to get it done. And even if there are people who've designed a product and you want it produced, we can make it for you. Like, you can commission with us to make your, okay, we want about 200 pieces of this bag that I've designed, and we would be more than happy to make it for you. So we're kind of finding our footing in that kind of spaces, because we can't do extremely large numbers, because these are going to be, it's going to be slowly made. We don't want to rush the process, and not, it's not going to look exactly the same. Everything is going to have a little bit of hand in them, and we would love to keep it that way. So it's right now we are even designing a bunch of sustainable decor that people can hire for events,
Okay.
where you don't want to buy decor. So we cloth buntings and other decorative origami stuff. It's all made by people with disability.
Mhm.
But we have like an entire unit that people can hire for an event, because we don't want to just stop sustainability as a selling point. We do truly feel and believe, because we burn our trash here. We
Yeah.
go through our, it's here, the realization is much more grounded here for us. So we're trying to do what we can, but we're looking at people to order with us, collaborate with us, come up, and especially weddings, dude. Like, if you want to give a meaningful return gift for your wedding, which is also unique to each person, and at the same time, because that's, you're going to throw money at it, might as well use for something good along the way, and you will feel that when you get the product. Like when it's been a year since I got married and I see everybody using the bag that we gave them. And like that's just like thank God. Otherwise that 500 rupees would have just gone down the drain. I would have given some dabba with some nonsense in it and sweets. What's the point?
Sustainable choices actually will make a difference. It's although it's
Yeah.
gradual,
And the
yeah,
in
yeah, it'll
India,
come.
wedding market is why freelance artists survive in India, be it photographers, designers,
True,
artists,
true,
decorators. Everybody survives only because of the wedding market. That's the only thing people are willing to spend.
mm, very true, very true. Is there like a small piece of advice or a small, thought-provoking mindset that you'd like to throw out to the world so that, either they're thinking of it or, they're making conscious decisions of it when they ever go through that particular circumstance? So, any kind of advice or anything on your end?
Well, one advice I think I would definitely give to anybody is practice gratitude. Like, you won't just think of it and feel it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
actually, if you want to say thank you, say thank you. Or like if you want to do something in return, do something in return. Like, at least think about gratitude. Like,
Correct.
what do you have gratitude for? Like, secondly, I'd love to say is be brave in the sense that don't try to only, kind of don't be so hard on yourself. Like, be a little vulnerable and be brave about what you think or what you feel and share it. Like, uh, try to keep it. You're not that. You don't compete for the best. We can all be amazing instead. This whole the greatest or the best number one artwork, this whole ranking in the art world is bullshit. Like, that's something we need to acknowledge. Instead, you make something amazing. I can make something again amazing. And if you find something amazing somebody's making, don't hesitate to appreciate. I see a lot of artists and designers in all aspects, like be it musicians or filmmakers, they hesitate to appreciate something that is locally made, or like, as if it's not theirs, they don't appreciate it as much, and I feel that's really dishonest feedback. So, there is some kind of jealousy in it, or some kind of whatever. I feel that sense of appreciation for things that really move you or touch you should happen more openly and more valuable than think, oh, what are they going to think of me if I say this? Like, it's okay. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. But if you have something nice to say, please say it. I think people don't say nice things to each other about each other's work anymore.
That's very powerful. Thinking of the situation we're living in, because it's just like be real. Like if you have something, just say it. Don't think of what the other person will think of you. Just let the give the other person a chance to think of it. Just appreciate
Yeah.
them for what they've done. You don't know what they.
And be honest about it. You don't have to go out and do it for everything. Like, oh,
Yeah,
wow, wow. Like, don't be. Yeah.
yeah, not sugarcoating, but at least that small post of appreciation can actually increase the other person's confidence tremendously. They're actually then wiring themselves to seek out greater things, thinking, there's at least someone that's appreciating, and yeah, I might make
It's,
a
I
difference.
don't think it'll ever stop for me. I can't speak for others. But if someone, like, I want to do art shows only to hear people say this is nice. Like, because, like, I think people assume that I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm like, no, I need to hear it. Like, that's the only thing that keeps me, it makes me really happy. It's not the only thing, but it really makes me happy to hear people say nice things. Like when I do put up artwork, I love it when people comment, like, or you don't have to comment anything personal, but even if they say this is very moving, it really makes a difference to me. Like, and I see value in that more than anything. Like for me, I've done many projects for many things, but the most moving or meaningful projects that I have done, I can't talk about it. I won't even talk about it because that's not why I did it. So it's like I think I have my own side. I get my validation and my fulfillment or purpose for my skill through other means, and that you don't expect in a public forum or a space. Social space is not going to give you that. What you have to do meaningfully, do it quietly. But what you want to do otherwise, be shameless about it.
True. That's very true. Even though it might feel cold-hearted, but like this is how real you can get. This is all this talk series is all about. Just face it as it is. There's no sugarcoating.
Yeah,
There's no hiding the fact or putting something in fine print. It's very direct, and I thank you so much for actually being so real with us, with your story, with your inspiration, with a mindset that's not very common to see around, and it's something that we are in dire need of right now. When everyone's living in denial, somehow you feel like you need a breath of fresh air to actually come out of that mindset and actually see the world for what it really is. And thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us.
thank you.
And I hope all
Thank
of
you.
the architects took notes as to where we can collaborate and how well we can actually create social awareness as well. Thank you so much. And
Thank
I hope we have multiple talk series with you on, other debatable issues as well.
you. Happy to. Very happy to.
Thank you so much for joining, ma'am. Uh,
Thank you so much for the
yeah.
opportunity.